episode of the Filmaholic. This is our One Tree Hill Rewatch series. We're almost done with season 2 now, so if you guys are new to the channel, if this is the first video from One Tree Hill that you're watching, go back, watch our other videos. I started with episode 1 of season 1, the pilot, and we're currently on episode 18 of season 2. So this episode here, we're going to be covering episode 218 through episode 221. So we're almost done with season 2. We only got one more episode after this, which we're going to cover the last 2 episodes. I'm a little bit behind. We're already on season 3 as far as the rewatch goes, so I'm trying to get caught up for these pretty quickly for you guys. Not this upcoming weekend, but the next. Today is March 5th, by the way, which I'm recording this. Soon we'll be going to Wilmington for a day, and I'm going to be going around to different sites, different locations that the show is filmed at, and giving some live little commentary from those spots for our Wilmington trip. And I hope you guys enjoy that because I'm really excited for it. So the first episode is 218, The Lonesome Road. Okay, this episode came out April 26, 2005, was written by Michael Lang, who had a total of 3 episodes. He directs 2 episodes later in season 4, and it was written by John A. Norris. This is the first of 11 episodes that he ends up directing through season 8. So some of the big things about this episode, I'm going to go ahead and touch on some of the smaller ones first, actually, get those out of the way. There's the whole ledger thing, which is not necessarily a small storyline, but in this episode, it's not as big as it is when we get later to it. The whole ledger thing comes about in this episode with Lucas and Andy really playing detective and trying to go after Dan. So they sort of, they find the money in the ceiling, and then Lucas goes and checks on it and realizes it's gone. So I think this is the point in the show really where Dan starts to catch on about Lucas's spying on him. And from this point forward, it's really a game of cat and mouse between them, or Sherlock and Moriarty. Which, by the way, I can't remember, because we're already on season 3, and it's been a little bit since I did watch these episodes, but I'm not sure if it's this one or if it's an upcoming episode where Dan has this conversation about Sherlock Holmes with Lucas. It might be this episode. And they talk about how, at the end of the Sherlock's run, him and the villain both fall off the side of the cliff, sacrifice each other to take down the villain, or sacrifices himself to take down the villain. But Dan says, the author just got tired of writing the character. I remember when this episode aired and just getting so into that idea of Sherlock Holmes and wanting to see this on film. And then I remember when the Sherlock Holmes movie came out, that's all I could think about was eventually seeing this scene play out cinematically. And it ends up happening in the second Sherlock Holmes film with Robert Downey Jr. But it's lackluster. Didn't really care for it. I think they could have done... That's a discussion for another time, because I really think those movies weren't that great, and they could have done a lot more with the Sherlock Holmes story and everything. But yeah, that really got me hyped for it, and then I was let down. But yeah, so this sets up the whole ledger stuff and the cat and mouse game that we have moving forward throughout the rest of the season with Lucas and Dan, and as well as Andy, but it's mainly the Lucas and Dan storyline that we have going on here. We also have, Jake still running from Nikki, trying to hide Jenny from her. Peyton's still trying to help out, obviously. She's in a relationship with Jake. Other people are trying to help out as well. Lucas talks to Nathan, and while Nathan's gone, which we'll get to in a second, they hide Jenny there at the apartment. Whitey ends up figuring out what's going on. He tries to talk to Jake. Wants the best for him, obviously. It really shows more how Whitey cares for all of these players, especially, the main ones that are actual, characters on the show. But eventually, at the end of this episode, Jake turns himself in and he goes to jail, which it makes sense. He knew that he had to do this, but also, I don't know what the long-term goal was. Was he just going to go to jail for life until Nikki was raised by someone else? I don't know. But anyways, he goes to jail, and Whitey ends up taking Jenny to some family of Jake's, which I think I was looking back into, and I remember Whitey tells Peyton something about Florida, is where he takes Jenny, but that's not really the case, I don't think, because I think later in the episode, Nikki says it's Savannah, which is what's been mentioned before, and where we find out that they are at later on. So I assume it is Savannah that Whitey takes Jenny to, and Jake goes to jail for the rest of the season. And then we get to the other bigger stuff about this episode that I want to talk about. First thing is Anna. This is Anna's last episode. Her, obviously Felix's last episode. Her brother was 217, the episode before this, where the parents are taking him out of school and sending him to military school because, he got expelled or suspended, whatever, for riding Dyke on Peyton's locker. Thankfully that he was taken out, because awful character. But the thing with Anna is, I'm not sure it was a good idea to take her out of the show. I was never a big Anna fan. She was never one of my favorite characters or anything, but she's only in one season. And it's the second season that you're really still trying to develop the characters that you had in season one. So I just felt like she didn't get enough for me to really analyze her as a character like all the other characters, of course, in the whole show, because it was really just her introduction season. This was like her season one, and then she was gone. And I don't know the whole the backstory about all this different stuff. What I assume is that it was the writer's decision to take her out, and that they had only planned to have Anna and Felix in season 2, and that was it. Or maybe because of fan reaction, or whatever reaction that people weren't really taking to those characters, that's why they took them out. Not really sure. Or maybe it was the actress who played Anna. She had other obligations, other things that she was attached to, wanted to make movies. I know she went and made The Hills Have Eyes. I think it was the second one, which, not a good film, but it's a movie nonetheless, and it gets you more out there. So maybe she just had other career goals and she didn't want to be locked down to the show, and that's fine if that was the case. But I really feel like they could have kept her on the show, send Felix off. Obviously, if you kept her on the show, you would have had to bring Felix back for at least a few episodes later on in the series to touch on his character, and how it plays into her character, because she's the one that, got him taken out of Tree Hill. But I really think they could have done a lot more with her character, and I think they could have kept her on, making maybe her a sort of core 6 moving forward in the show. I'm not saying I'm upset about it, but I think that's probably what they should have done, because it would have created more diversity into the show, both because she's not white like all the other main characters, and also, she is gay, and I think that added another element to the show that is lacking overall the course of the series. As far as I remember, and maybe I'm wrong and I'll remember somebody else as we go through, there's only 2 gay characters the whole series, and that's Anna, and I think his name is Josh in season 7, and that whole thing is not done very well. I thought the Anna one was done well, and I would have liked to see her character develop more over the course of the series. But we don't see that. In this episode, her ex comes back. Not comes back. She comes to Tree Hill to visit. And after a discussion with her, Anna feels like she needs to come out to her parents. And she does. I also feel like... Well, no, I feel like they handled that okay. Because we've never met her parents. So the way they shot that scene was fine. Because we haven't seen her parents. So to introduce some random actress for that one scene just to get their reaction and stuff would have been weird, especially since this is her last episode. There's no point in doing that. But I think that you could have kept her in the show and actually did bring in some people to play her parents that would be on recurring guest stars, and really expanded on that scene too, her coming out to her parents. I felt like that was a scene that we kind of got left out and didn't get to see fully from what we actually did see. And then she says bye to Lucas, and she's gone. we didn't even really get to see her have a final scene with Peyton, which is this is fine. And also, another thing that bothers me too is even though they took her off, you would think that with her character, she would have came back at some point in the series. I would say after the 5-year time jump, but she didn't. And I don't know if that was like an actress choice of her just not wanting to come back and she had other things that she wanted to do, or if it was a writer's decision. Because there's a lot of other little things that they do in the future seasons, especially season 8, that I'm like, you could have brought back some of these characters like Anna, and let us revisit that character and see where they're at versus bringing in these other sideline characters that you're going to have for just a little bit and no one really cares about. And when we get to those characters, I will talk about it, and it's nothing to do with the actors or actresses. It's just forced in writing, I feel like, later on. Anyways, so the other big thing about this episode is Nathan he went in the last episode to see Haley. And now he's on the way back to Tree Hill. And on his way back, he stops in Athens, Georgia, at the famous Swinging Donkey, which is this bar that Taylor's now working at. He goes there to visit her, and she has a place there, like an apartment upstairs, and that's where he's staying the night at. So he goes there, he drinks with her at the bar, he ends up getting on the bar, dancing, all this different stuff. What's cool is that this is filmed at Hell's Kitchen in Wilmington. Hell's Kitchen is a bar restaurant downtown. If you're ever in Wilmington, definitely check it out. I highly recommend it. The first time I actually went to Hell's Kitchen was when they were filming season 6 of One Tree Hill. They weren't filming during season 6. This was just us, me and my mother checking it out and eating there. But one of the reasons I wanted to go there was because they had filmed there for One Tree Hill in this episode as a Swinging Donkey. And it's not the first time that they've ever filmed at Hell's Kitchen. They've also filmed there during Dawson's Creek. I believe it was in season 6. Joey actually worked there, I think, at the bar, which at that point she was in Boston, I believe, going to college. So this was actually supposed to be in Boston at the time. And I think they kept the name Hell's Kitchen for that one. But here it's called the Swinging Donkey. And so definitely check it out if you're in Wilmington. They have really good seafood options, and also, like, Sarah's a vegetarian. I only eat seafood, so it has a lot of good vegetarian options as well, which I love Wilmington, but a lot of places that I've been to haven't had that great of vegetarian options in Wilmington. So this one definitely does. Check it out if you're there. They have some good food. But Nathan goes to see Taylor there, and you could say almost hook up, but I don't think that was ever going to be the case between any of them. Obviously, Nathan was going to back out of it because he loves Haley. He couldn't go through with that. And Taylor, I think, was just, I don't know what she was supposed to be, like this guardian type character in this episode, but she wouldn't have really done that to Nathan either, or Haley. And I really liked their moment at the end. Just a little sweet moment within when he's about to leave. And you can see another side to her character that we get little bits of before, but you really get to see it here, the softer side of her, and the fact that she does care, and she is this troubled character that I almost wish they had did more with Taylor too. And she does come back. She comes back in season 7, and I'm glad they do bring her back. But I feel like you could have done more with her character as well, especially after the 5-year time jump. You could have brought her back before season 7, actually, and focused more on Haley and her family, and had Taylor have her own storyline and all this. I feel like they could have done that. They didn't, so we missed out on that. But that's pretty much episode 218. It was a solid episode. Then we go to 219. I'm wide awake. It's morning. This is not one of my favorite episodes. There is some good stuff, like some emotional stuff in this episode. So I'm not going to shit on it completely, but it's NASCAR heavy. They go Cooper, which is Nathan's uncle, which I'm not a big fan of it either. The actor's cool, Michael Trucco, but not a fan of the character Cooper, really. He comes back, obviously, again in season 3, and a little bit in season 4. But he's a race car driver, and he invites Nathan, who then invites Lucas to come and spend the weekend with him at Charlotte Motor Speedway, which I think at the time was Lowe's Motor Speedway. So they go there, and we're introduced to this another character called Daytona. I don't really know what she was doing because she was only in the one episode, and then they never bring her back, so that was weird too. But anyways, they end up racing cars in this episode, and Nathan doesn't follow the rules after the race is over. And we go, and this is actually a really good scene, despite like the NASCAR heavy North Carolina stuff that I just wasn't a fan of. But the scene was really good. We have the Get Up Kids music playing in the background, which was really good. Flashbacks to Nathan and Haley, and then he crashes into the wall, which it's never really answered. Was he trying to kill himself, or did he just have a moment where he spaced out? I think he probably was trying to kill himself, which we'll talk about again when we get to the next episode, or the next couple episodes. But so he crashes, they run, they get him, and he's rushed to the hospital. And this, also, let's take it back a little bit to a couple things. One, the whole Deb and her pill addiction, which we've already been showed Lucas spying on her and seeing her take the pills, him confronting her, how she reacts to that. This is taken further in this episode because obviously she drinks a lot in this episode. Dan finds her in the flower bed, and that a really funny scene. I think what's really underrated about the show is the comedic and the comedic moments and the chemistry between Barbara Allen Woods and Paul Johansson is incredible. But so after Nathan's in the car crash, Dan and Deb go to the hospital, and Deb is the same blood type as Nathan, and that's his mother as well, so she's going to donate blood. So she donates blood, but then the doctor comes out later and says, they were able to find more blood, and Deb was like, you needed more than what I gave? And he just savagely, in front of Dan and everything, says, how long have you been abusing prescription drugs? Which was kind of an awkward scene, but, it had to happen for the story to move forward and Dan to find out that she was abusing pills. So it was at this point where people start to find out how, that she's addicted to pills, which then bleeds into the next episode with her deciding to actually go to rehab and solve this problem. Also taking it back, Andy and Karen have had this relationship, right, this season, which I don't know how they thought they could keep it going without someone figuring it out and reporting it to the dean or whoever at the school, because it is a little bit of an issue, right? An ethical issue, the student dating the professor, that's a bit weird. No matter the ages, it's still not you obviously can't have that happen because, or somebody else has to grade the papers at least. It needs to be addressed. Paul Johansson, it is Paul Johansson, but Dan shows up in the classroom. There's this well-written scene. I love all the stuff they have with Dan up until the finale this season. Then I start to have a little bit of a problem with it. But up so far, I really like all the writing they have with Dan. He comes up to the classroom and reveals to the classroom that Karen and Andy are having a relationship. So at this point, a student then reports it to the dean, who has a talk with Andy and either tells him to end the relationship or he'll be fired. So Andy quit because he loves Karen and wants their relationship to continue. He doesn't really, there'll be other teaching jobs or other jobs that he can do. He's a millionaire. He doesn't even have to work if he didn't want to. So that happens, but it is a sucky situation for Andy. So we move from that to, then we go to the hospital. Everyone ends up showing up at this hospital, right, for Nathan. And we have some good little scenes between everybody there. Karen trying to call Keith to let him know, which Keith was never really that close to Nathan. So I feel like she's overreacting. It's really more unrelated to that. It's really more her just missing Keith and wanting to talk to him about whatever, because she's always been able to do that. And also adding more to Andy being jealous of Keith, I feel like, and the fact that he is not Keith, and can't really fill that same void that Keith has. And And this, I'm not sure if I already said this. This episode was directed by Thomas J. Wright, who already wrote three episodes up until this point, or directed 3 episodes up until this point, and was written by Mark Schwann. It's a bit of a weird episode, I feel like, for Mark Schwann to write, because usually he writes episodes that I find are good, despite, his own thing. And I'm not saying it's a bad episode. It had good moments, like I said. I didn't like the whole NASCAR angle. I think they could have done something different, but that's just me. The next episode here is another episode that I'm not a big fan of. This is actually my second least favorite episode of the series. It's episode 220, Lifetime Piling Up. This episode aired on May 10th, 2005, was directed by Les Butler, who directs some pretty good episodes throughout the series. This is the first of 9 total episodes that he directs throughout the course of the rest of the show, through season 9. He directs episode 512, which is called 100, which is one of my favorite episodes of the series. I think it's my favorite episode. It was my favorite episode when it came out. Just incredible. And he directed that one, which is, once again, a bit odd, because you would think Mark Schwann would direct the 100th episode, but he didn't. I think at the time he wanted to instead direct the finale, was one of the things that I heard. Like, he switched directing the 100th episode for the finale. I don't know why he couldn't do both, but whatever. It was written by Mark B. Perry. This is the final of the 4 episodes that he wrote in One Tree Hill. Really, I don't really think this episode makes a whole lot of sense, and that's why I don't like it, because it's supposed to be if Dan had went back and been with Karen instead of staying with Deb, what things would have been like. And to me, this is absolutely not what things would have been like if that had happened. The only thing that I'll say in its defense is that it's Nathan's dream. So it doesn't have to actually make sense of what would have happened, because it's just Nathan's dream. So anything could be in his dream of what he thinks, it doesn't have to make sense because it's his dream. And that's fine. Like, I understand that now after rewatching it, and I'm okay with it, but it's just not for me. I'm not a big fan of the episode. The main things about this episode that I have to take away are the ending moments, and, Deb comes in to see Nathan, and they have like a little sweet moment, and then Deb decides to go to rehab. Dan takes her there and drops her off. And also, Nathan calls Haley, who's at the airport, and is about to come back to Tree Hill to see Nathan because of the car crash. And Nathan tells her, "I don't want you to come home." So then she doesn't. And I think those were kind of big moments for the episode moving forward. But yeah, just not a great episode in my opinion, but if you guys like it, comment below, let me know what you think. There is another episode later on that is a dream episode, and it's not like a narrative through line. Like, it takes you out. It's a dream, takes you out, and it's like the episode with Lucas dreaming in season 6. It's a 1940s episode that he actually wrote, Chad Michael Murray. I like that one a lot, because that definitely is a dream. It's all like fictional from Lucas, and I just liked it. This one just wasn't for me. And the last episode I want to talk about here is episode 221, What Could Have Been. This episode aired May 17th, 2005, was directed by Bethany Rooney, and written by Mark Schwann. Which I'm kind of surprised that he wrote 3 episodes in a row. Almost 4. So he didn't write 20. He wrote 19, 21, 22, and 23 the rest of the series. So he really got into writing that into the show, the season 2. I'm curious moving forward, looking at like seasons, like how many there at the end does he write? Usually if it's like a lot in a row, or if this was just season 2. So in this episode, you have the fact that Lucas, like I said, we're going to touch on this again. Nathan, did he try to kill himself or not? Lucas keeps asking him about it because he thinks he needs to go see someone if that was the case. But Nathan won't admit to it and never really does. Brooke helps Lucas with the shredded paper, adding more to him spying on Dan and the whole cat and mouse storyline. Brooke pieces the paper back together, tapes it back together. This is, great news for Lucas, who now knows that the whole car, the not reporting the actual amount to the government. He takes that to Andy. Him and Andy do more research into Dan to the point where they find out that Dan's been saving money for Lucas to go to college since he was a kid. And Lucas doesn't really believe it, though. I feel like he tries to act, he wants to believe that this is just, it says this for Lucas, but it's really not. But it is. And, another stupid mistake Lucas makes, in my opinion. But Andy asks him, do you want to keep going, or do you want to, stop? Because Dan doesn't mean anything to me. That's your father. Do you want to keep going? Do you want to see what happens? And Lucas is like, yeah, I do. Also, you have in this episode, obviously, up until this point, and in this episode, you keep building on Brooke and Lucas and their relationship. Lucas obviously has feelings for Brooke. Brooke has feelings for Lucas too. And it almost comes to a head at this point where Brooke was going to call Lucas and ask him on a date. And then she, obviously, because she's staying in his room, finds old stuff between him and Peyton. Peyton gave him drawings and stuff. And it really upsets her. And fair enough, And she decides not to ask him and, says, let's not ruin this now. Which also in this episode, Nathan gets the letters from his mom talking about how that she wants to be a family again. He also confronts Dan, who paid for his rent and his medical bills because, that's his dad and his son needed him, and that's what he did. So Nathan, kind of asked Lucas to back off, like stop digging into this stuff. Like, we're all going to be a family again. I need you to back off. And I also think it's time for you to leave. As far as like Lucas staying there at the house, and Lucas does. He moves out, which I think was a missed opportunity to show what it would have been like with Nathan and Lucas both living in the house with Dan. I really would have liked to see that, even if it was just for one more episode. Like, if it was one episode, that would have been cool. And Dan seemed really excited about it, even though at this point I feel like he knows about the Lucas spying on him. I still think he was, excited about them all living together and the chance to finally get both his sons under the same roof. But Lucas moves out and moves back to Karen's, where Brooke is now living as well. And, Karen's like, I know there's a past between you guys, so she wants to lay some ground rules. And Brooke's like, don't worry, like, we're just friends, which kind of like obviously shatters Lucas. But that storyline's not over. Obviously, it shows you that she doesn't really mean that with Brooke, and what's going to happen in the next episode, which the next episode after this, when we get to it, is episode 222, but really I consider it a two-part finale because these episodes aired at the same time. So to me, you have to watch them back to back because that's how I originally watched them on TV, so that's how we watched them when we watched them. But we're not done with this episode yet. Obviously, a couple episodes ago as well, I do want to mention they've repaired the Mouth and Brooke relationship. The Mouth and Brooke relationship has been repaired, but it's also brought Erica Marsh back into it, who ran against Brooke for class president and started a relationship with her and Mouth that we see in the next few episodes, and then we'll carry over into Mouth's storyline into season 3, him getting over her. This is the first time we've actually seen a relationship from Mouth in the show, and I know we have at least one more we have 2 more in the high school years for Mouth. So he does good in high school actually. We have the benefit for Nathan, obviously, because originally they were going to do it for his medical bills. Dan, ended up paying them, but Nathan does have other bills and he can't go back to work, so he's got to have those paid. And they raise this benefit for him. During the scene where Nathan goes to confront Dan about paying the bills, he accuses him from not being sincere, which sucks because I think he probably was being sincere. But overall, at this point, Nathan makes the decision to get an annulment from Haley, which he then, later in season 3, he takes that back. Like, he doesn't want to do that. He'd rather get a divorce than annulment because annulment means it doesn't happen. But he did have those papers. He did sign those papers. And he had Dan take those papers to Haley, who we know ends up signing it, but she doesn't sign her name. She writes, "I love you" in the spot, which is interesting when we get to those next couple episodes when we talk about her giving those papers to Lucas to take back. What her mindset was then, because I'm a little bit confused on that. But yeah, so that's episode 221, which leads us to the moment where we get to the 2-part finale. Yeah, so we're almost done with season 2. I think season 2 is a solid season, but I did have a couple like things I didn't like as much as I thought I did looking back on it. But it's still a well-written season overall, and I still really enjoyed it. But we're setting up for season 3, which is the best season of the show, 5 out of 5. Perfect season for me. So I'm excited to definitely talk about season 3 with you guys, but that's our episode today. And check back soon. We're going to have the season 2 finale up for you guys. We're going to talk about that. See you guys next time.